Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my page 112 tag video for December 2025. This is also my Buzzwordathon pick video for December 2025, and if you want to go to that part of the video, just click to this timestamp right here. But before I get to that, I'm going to play my last page 112 tag game of the year. Well, I guess my last of both, technically. It's kind of crazy to think about. But anyway, the page 112 tag was brought to BookTube by Sean Breathes Books. It's based off of a French literary prize wherein they comprise the long list of said prize solely by reading page 112 of the books in contention. And as these books are mostly novels, page 112 is somewhere in the middle. It's supposed to be past the polished for editors pages when you get to the raw, real writing. And without all of the context of the past 111 pages, you can solely, technically, judge the book based on the quality of the writing on that page. So I've been using this tag since COVID to tackle my physical unread shelves while slowly, building them back up again as well. I take 3 pieces of paper from this handy dandy Books and Cats mug. These pieces of paper are titles on my physical unread shelves that I acquired in 2024 or earlier. So what I do is I go ahead and randomly pick out 3 of these pieces of paper, then read page 112 with you, and finally choose one of the books to add to my month's TBR. Of course, as I said before, the goal is to judge the book based on the quality of the writing, but I always tend to fudge things a bit because one thing I'm looking for right now is a book I can also find on audiobook, which I know is a bit ridiculous since I have the physical book on my shelves, but I also have limited time for reading physical books in an already full December TBR, and I have a slot for an audiobook, so that's what I hope to get. We'll see if the mug is nice to me. And without further ado, let's get into it, starting with book number 1. Another thing I tend to like is a little bit of variety in these books, although usually they're about the same genre, more or less. But, if, they come from different times and places, that'd be nice. But we'll see what we have. Have the least amount of papers in this mug right now since the beginning of the year, but still a fair few left. But anyway, I'll stop talking and look at this one. And this is The Weaver and the Witch King by Genevieve Gornichek. This is actually a pretty unusual one for me because this is fantasy. And most of the books in this mug are literary to general-ish fiction. But yeah, I found this fantasy novel in my writing salon's little free library, and I thought I'd just go for it because I know I'd heard of it, and I just thought I'd just yank it that one day, and that's what I did. And it's been sitting on my shelf ever since, and now I get to finally check it out. All right, and now we're going for book number 2, which at the very least I assume will be a different genre, and this last book was from 2024, although I bet this next one will be too, because I picked out a lot of the earlier books earlier in the year, but we shall see. Here is one piece of paper from this mug, and it is If You Want to Make God Laugh by Bianca Murray. So actually, this is, I believe, an earlier acquisition for me, maybe a year or so earlier. I found out about this because for a while I was listening to this great podcast for writers called The Shit No One Tells You About Writing. I'm kind of sad that I fell off the bandwagon of that one. But anyway, at one point, the host, Bianca Murray, had just recently published a novel, and I decided I wanted to give, well, at least one of her novels a go. I think this one was a little bit earlier, but I went to a local bookstore to me, East City Books, which actually one of its associates has been on the podcast a lot. And so that's where I picked up the book, and I believe I've played with it before, so at least I have a little less post-production to do now, so huzzah! All right, and with all of that out of the way, I'm going to go for book number 3. I've already have a fair bit of diversity in genres and years, so we'll see what else we can possibly do here. All righty, book number 3. And this is Fake Accounts by Lauren Euler, which I also think I got before 2024. I'm pretty sure I got it for Indie Bookstore Day a year or so ago. And I think I got it from Kramer Books, another indie DC bookstore. I'll check, but I am pretty sure that I haven't played with it before, but it is basically another sort of generalish, literary-ish fiction, and it was on my list. I probably heard about it through Book Riot, and yeah, now we can finally try it out. Okay, so you've seen me grab these three books. I am going to go and read them to myself first and gather my thoughts, but I will be back soon, so stay tuned. Okay, I'm back and ready to talk shop, starting with book number 1, The Weaver and the Witch Queen by Genevieve Gornichek. My family has a long history with King Harald, Thorolf said. He killed my uncle Thorolf, who was in his service and for whom I'm named. My father made sure to make his displeasure known before he left the country. It's a good thing he was already planning on leaving before he was outlawed. Gunhild was aghast. And you came to Norway to serve a son of a man who killed your uncle? That wasn't my intention when I left home, but it's how things happened, and I don't regret it. Thorolf gave her hand a squeeze. I'm going to Iceland for the winter, for the first time since I left. I wish for you to come with me. She was glad of the darkness, so he couldn't see the dubious look on her face. When we arrive at your father's, he continued, I mean to ask him for your hand, but first I want to make sure it is what you want as well. After just one time you wish to marry me? She asked, trying to sound teasing, but her voice was tight. We just met today. Well, yesterday, but... Some couples don't even get the chance to meet before they marry, let alone lie together to see how things go in that regard. Was it really so good for you? This both surprised and pleased her. Thorolf's voice sounded a bit panicked. Was it not for you? No, it was. That's not what I meant, she said hastily. It's just, this is unexpected. You're the most remarkable person I've ever met, he said with such sincerity that she flushed at the compliment. And I've been thinking, once we return to your father's hall, he may force you to marry. At least this way you'd have a choice. You can ensure your fate before he even gets the chance to force another man upon you. Gunhild frowned at this. In her determination to get to Odni and rescue Signy, she hadn't considered her own prospects. Next summer, Hyde had meant to take Gunhild around Norway and introduce her as her successor. After that, Gunhild would have taken the name Hyde and let her mentor retire to the woods for good. Okay, so, there's some interesting stuff, I think, happening on this page. I think I just especially like, you know, the sexual part of the conversation. It's not really what I was expecting, because it seemed like things were gearing up for a more traditionalist view of, you know, marriage and courtship. And, you know, I'm pretty sure the setting is maybe, you know, some far past, you know, Scandinavian past, and so to have in there, wait, we just had sex. Was it good for you? Was it good for you? I don't know. I thought that was pretty, you know, touching or you know, amusing to follow. It was on the heels of something that could be interesting, where Thorolf is in the service of someone. It seems shocking he would be, and I guess we're not quite sure why. I mean, at least not on this page. And also, like at the beginning, I was surprised. I'm like, I want more detail on this, but now I'm realizing by the end of it that maybe we're in the third-person perspective of Gunhild, because she's the one who at the very end, we go back into thinking in her head about what she actually wants to do, which again veers away from what I expected, because it seems like, you know, he's talking about, which I guess is an assumption on his part, that, you know, maybe we're going to a traditionalist place where her father will force her to marry, but it seems more like she has a more independent thing in mind. Well, first of all, she definitely has a goal that she wants to rescue someone, and then she seems to have a mentor she'll replace. So it seems like what she's going through is different than what Thorolf expects. So that could be intriguing as well. And maybe we'll have been following her journey throughout this time, so maybe it wouldn't be a shock to us. But it does make her an intriguing sounding character. Though I don't know, it's certainly a lot of names and so forth to put on the page. But that's sort of one of those technicalities that it would be easier to follow if we already had the context of who these people are. And I would give this some, kudos, for that, interaction between the two of them, which I thought was quite charming. Book number 2 is If You Want to Make God Laugh by Bianca Murray, which I've actually had on my shelves since December of 2022. It's just crazy how time flies. Laletti rolls over, her eyes glazed with fever. The pillow is stained red. She groans and then closes her eyes again. Mama, wake up. Laletti's eyes open again and seek Zadwa's, though when they meet it feels as if Laletti is looking right through her. Where is the baby? The corners of Laletti's mouth twitch upward. Demisa, my son, is that you? Dread washes over Zadwa. Her mother is clearly delirious, and who knows what a person in her state might have done. No, it's me, Zadwa, your daughter, Zadwa says, shaking her gently. Where is my baby, Mama? Baby? The ghost of a smile disappears. Yes, the baby. Don't you remember? Where is he? Where is my son? Laletti's eyes widen in what appears to be a moment of clarity. She opens her mouth to answer, and Zadwa strains forward to hear what her mother will say. I took him. She stumbles over the words. You took the baby? Zadwa prompts, trying to keep her voice calm despite her rising panic. You took him where? He is gone. Gone? Gone where, Mama? What did you do with him? I did it for you, Laletti answers, and for him. What? What did you do? Laletti seems to consider the question, but before she can answer, her eyes roll back as she begins convulsing. Okay, so this page I feel like is quite obviously the end of a chapter, as you can see here. And I think Murray quite deliberately ended it on, a dramatic note to get you to keep reading, although it seems like perhaps we're going on to the next chapter might be a new character named Ruth. But anyway, yeah, I feel like that's kind of heavy end of chapter drama. And, we have very little context for what's going on. Obviously that's true all the time, but there's not a lot happening on this page. It, I think, explains pretty clearly, though, that the mother seems to have some sort of medical issue, and that's why Zadwa believes that the mother has gotten rid of her son. And we don't know any other context for, why this might have happened, why the mother might have felt justified other than perhaps illness, but I would assume there's more going on in this book as well. And I think on its surface it just feels a little dramatic for dramatic's sake, and with more context it would feel less dramatic for dramatic's sake. The fact that, of course, the mother is convulsing right as she might be able to spill the beans about what she did with the boy. But, if we had been with the characters and the mother had been getting, worse and worse, that wouldn't seem so convenient, I don't think. So I feel like this one kind of suffers from, a page 112 that's like just a little less going on and is quite deliberately a dramatic moment to, get tension moving. And I do think the tension actually was really nice on this page. Like, the stuttering dialogue and Zadwa leaning forward to hear her and like trying to keep the panic out. I mean, it's just like the rising tension of, what happened to the boy and are we going to find out, and, racing against time for whatever's happening with the mother, or if the mother will tell her. But overall, I feel like it isn't as grabby on its own. I think I'm going to put this one down for now, but obviously I'm looking forward to ultimately getting to it. And finally, book number 3 is Fake Accounts by Lauren Euler, which actually I checked, and it turns out I got this on Indie Bookstore Day earlier this year, which is shocking to me. It must feel like April was a long time ago now. Speaking of being wonky in another direction with time, I guess something is off with me in time today. But anyway, let me get to this. It turns out that the first sentence is a very long one, so I have to start significantly into page 111, so let's see how we do here. For some reason, or perhaps no reason, but given the trajectory so far, it's going to be pretty difficult to convince you that there was no reason. The reason being obvious, even if it may need unpacking. The reason being like a giant suitcase in the middle of a room with one of those locks on it that legally the airlines have to be able to open with minimal effort. The reason being an insult to people who spend years in therapy trying to understand their own reasons. The reason being, nevertheless, something I did not think about it, which I guess is where the translation for some reason comes from. I replied, as if I had grown up hearing stories about it my whole life, that my parents had lived in Nuklon before reunification, working as English teachers, and I had always wanted to learn more about that period of German history. Freda said, "Ah, cool," and told me that the bus from Schoenfeld would drop me off right around the corner from the apartment. Then Freda's brow furrowed, and she said, "But you don't speak German?" "I don't care, I want to practice English, but just because your parents, you know..." And I said no, and my parents didn't speak it either, that much being true. And then there's a break. A wet late winter chill had seeped into the stone of my building's entryway, and it had often felt colder standing there than in the street. The apartment was in Nuklon, referenced to in the literature as the hipster neighborhood off Sonnenallee near Richardplatz. My street was uglier than the others in the area, which was historic and every year hosted a Christmas market with donkeys. On the street were two buildings racked with scaffolding and other facades, flat and peeling, and a stone front that, though the space beyond the display was always dark like an office on the weekend, featured a collection of objects that changed frequently. Arrangements of beads and copper wire that someone else might call sculptures, a yellow deck of cards, a wig splayed on a table, cacti, a broom that had been altered to look like a man who was wearing sunglasses with his hair sticking straight up. Next to my building was a cafe with a bright AstroTurf welcome mat out front, and on Sundays it was packed with screenings of Totarot, which I was told was the German version of Law and Order. Okay, so I gotta admit, this was a little bit of a tongue twister to get through, and as I was reading it, I was thinking, this kind of sounds like the type of book that would make it onto Steve Donahue's Worst Fiction of the Year list. So I took a look back, and indeed, this book did make it onto Steve Donahue's Worst Fiction of the Year list. However, I picked it up much later from the bookstore when I saw it, which was a little bit of a just because it wasn't what was in front of me, but also I put it on my list in the first place, and I think that had to do with commentary on that this is about, I think, online internet culture, and also some parts of it take place not in Germany, where I was probably mispronouncing names, but in DC, and it has sort of a political bent about the beginning of Trump's first term. So I was hoping, in keeping with some other reviews, that it might be more of a dry, sardonic commentary on the times. And in that way, I maybe could, legitimize some of these sentences as sort of, some sort of playfulness. The beginning sentence certainly speaks to a huge degree of denial about wanting to talk about her parents, or the narrator's parents, whoever the narrator is. The difficulty of even like trying to explain the past to like a random person you're trying to ask directions to, which is what I assume is how this is going, or maybe it's not a random person because we have the person Freda named. And then we, get a little bit of a description of the neighborhood, and there are some dry, interesting thoughts in there, like about the random detritus around the neighborhood, and about basically a Law and Order watch party, which certainly to my American ears sounds like just a little, quirky and absurd. Such a rote show. So anyway, I'm making excuses for this book because this is the one I found on audio. So I do think I'm just going to go ahead and read it because I have a slot to read this book in. And as a final note, This does bring my page 112 year into a little bit of symmetry because I bought 2 books for Indie Bookstore Day back in April, and I started back in January picking the second book as my page 112 tag pick, and now in December here is, rounding out that haul. All right, and now to the Buzzwordathon part of this video. The Buzzwordathon is a readathon that's been put on annually by Kayla at Books and Lala for several years. She takes popular trends in literature and makes them into monthly prompts. Every year she has been doing trends in titles, but this year in 2025 she also added trends in cover design for the first time. This is also my first time taking part in the readathon because I had a collection of books that I acquired last year, a large collection that I wanted to justify, purchasing because by, quickly reading several of them. And so that was the Raid the Shelves haul that I did in 2024 back in September, I think it was. I got 18 books from that. Raid the Shelves was put on by the Jewish Book Council, which is an organization whose website I basically live on. And every year they invite patrons into their offices in Manhattan, actually, to, gather up as many books as we can carry. And they have a huge collection that were sent to them from publishers and elsewhere. So I took a big trip, made a big trip out of it, had a lot of fun, and wanted to, justify all of those books I carted back home. And so it turns out that the Coverathon Readathon fit those prompts. I was able to fit those prompts really well. And as you can see, I have been diligently going through each prompt month by month, and here we are at the end of the year at last. It really feels like a victory getting through this particular goal. And so yes, in order to round out December and actually make said victory, the prompt is to go with a monochromatic cover. And so I've decided to go with The Majority by Elizabeth L. Silver, going with the fact that, the majority of this cover as well is black. So here is how I'm going to end my Raid the Shelves year. And that about covers it for me now. You can find the Goodreads links for all of these books listed down below, as well as the link to my playlist for the TBR games I play, which is this monthly page 112 tag and a quarterly booktube spin game. So check that out if you'd like. And yeah, I really enjoy doing these TBR game style videos and adding books to my shelves that way, and I am kind of grateful I could slot in what I needed here. Hopefully I won't regret it. We'll see. Anyway, expect me back on this channel in the near future for some actually reading and reviewing content. Hanukkah is upon us, and I do a personal short story readathon for the 8 Nights of Hanukkah, so I'll be, sharing 8 short stories in a video coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.